start of day 2. I mean, quite late starting the day. Got everything packed up and then only then remembered service my chain. Had to unpack everything just to get to the tools.
The morning of the 5th, the second day of riding. Yesterday really kicked my ass. I always forget that no manner of planning can really get your body ready for that many hours on the bike, particularly without a screen. I slept in today, at least later than I'd intended, but just enough time this morning to get the bike maintenance done, bags packed, and get going just after daybreak.
Alright, here we go. Aiming for Colorado today. Let's see if I make it.
After a stop for gas and a look at the map, I realized just how far off the path I'd ended up when finding a motel the night before. I'll need to cut through some back roads and paths to get off the highway and back on my sort of route. Although you can't make decent time if you spend all day on dirt and gravel roads, they sure are a hell of a lot of fun. In no time at all, I'm back on a paved surface and making great time. Well, until the next gravel bit, but they only last so long. I said I would do my best to clean up the audio from the on-the-road recordings I made. Today's is particularly bad quality, so I'll likely cut out most of it, but here's some of my ramblings from day 2.
Right. So, day 2. Stayed at a hotel last night. Well, a motel. Motel 6. I made the decision to stay because I kept pushing it last night on how far I was going to go. I did not make it as far as I wanted to, and yet was still trying to push it. So by the time I actually rocked up somewhere where there was a motel, it was well past dark, and I should have stopped long before that. However, I didn't. So, got really good sleep, actually, like really good sleep. Slept in a little bit more than I'd expected even, because I wanted to get going really early this morning, but the sleep was worth it. I feel so good today compared to how I thought I was going to feel, just because I'd pushed it so much yesterday and did not prepare for this trip the way I wanted to. So a lot of people ask, like, what do you do to prepare for a trip? What you should do every day for a couple of months before you go on a trip is at least a really good walk every day, and every couple of days go for a jog or a run. Move, move, move. That's the key to preparing for a motorcycle trip, because on the trip itself, you're going to do a lot of stationary sitting. And you need your body at a spot where it can handle the stress of sitting for a long period of time for days on end. So the last thing you want in the months leading up to this is to be sitting around waiting for the time you're going to be sitting on your bike. In the event that something goes wrong and you're stuck pushing your bike, you're going to really, really, really wish that you did a lot of core work, because you're going to feel it in your abs and in your shoulders and in your lower back. So we're in windmill country here, it looks like. I hadn't seen those yet this morning. And I'm waiting for the moment where I can actually see the mountains that way. I just don't know when that will be, because I haven't even gotten out of Illinois yet. So it's Illinois, and then I'll be going into Iowa for a little bit, and then hopping into Nebraska, and then all the way through Nebraska, which is a mission. It's a big state, the direction I'm going through it. Anyway, fingers crossed, right? So, the mistakes that I made on a motorcycle trip, remember the first thing you do in the morning before you pack your goddamn bike. Service it. Check your chain. Tighten your chain. Oil or wax your chain. Whatever it is that you're going to do. Remember doing 20, 30 kilometers a day and then parking your bike until you go to work the next day. You are doing hundreds and hundreds of kilometers a day. And it's unusual, I would say, for someone on a big motorcycle trip like this to not at least start pushing close to 500 kilometers. Now, I'm not necessarily saying everyone will do 500 every day. It also depends on the roads you're on. I mean, obviously how fast you want to go, things like that. But so like if I was on nothing but dirt roads, then I'm not probably going to get 500 kilometers in a day. But that said, if I'm on dirt roads, I'm adding a whole bunch of dust and debris and nastiness to my chain. So fewer kilometers still means that I should service it. And then if I'm not on dirt roads and stuff, I'm on regular tarmac like this, and let's say I can push up to 1,000 kilometers a day. The average is, what is it? Like 500 kilometers, something like that. They recommend that you oil and you lube and service your chain every 500 kilometers. So if you're doing 1,000 kilometers in a day, well, you well past that. Now, I don't really think that it's the same as a chain that heats up and cools down, heats up, cools down, heats up, cools down over a weeks and weeks period until you hit 500 kilometers. My gut tells me that in some ways is going to do more. It's going to do more. I don't know why I think that, and hopefully maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong. In other ways, running a chain for 1,000 kilometers in a day, it stays active and hot the entire time. That in itself might mean that I'm wrong and that it's more inclined to wear out at temperature or something. I don't know. But I do think you can get away with an entire day's riding on a chain, 1,000, 1,200 kilometers, something like that. But it does not mean you get on your bike the next day and just take off. That is not at all what that means. And you really do need to make sure that you service your chain. Another thing that I fucked up big time this trip was I always do an oil change right before I go. Always. And I specifically wanted to do an oil change this time because I'd done the clutch. So I wanted to run the clutch in for a while and then do an oil change to make sure, any filaments and stuff that have come off the clutches as they were breaking in gets picked up by that filter, and then I swap it out, put some new oil in there, and I'm good to go for the trip. Guess what I did not do before my trip? The oil. So I rocked in somewhere in Illinois last night, and I went to get gas, and my oil light popped on, and I thought, oh shit, because the moment that happened, it occurred to me that I did not do the maintenance that I always do before I leave on a road trip. And I had just done 1,000 kilometers. So on top of not doing an oil change when I knew I needed to do an oil change, I've now run 1,000 kilometers on dirty oil, on 10W30 oil, when the temperature for the last couple of weeks has been blisteringly hot, even in Canada, and the temperatures that I was facing yesterday were by no means cool, and I'm only going further south, and 14, 15 hours yesterday, and then I was surprised when I burnt off so much fucking oil that I had to top it up. And now I'm concerned, because I don't have the time or the patience to do a proper oil change before I get to Arizona. I mean, first I gotta source an actual filter, which means finding a motorcycle shop. and then hoping that they have it in stock, which it's hit or miss. It really is with these old bikes. I mean, the filters are used across such a wide breadth of bikes that there's a good chance they'll have one that will fit my bike. But if they don't, then it's got to be ordered in, and I'm not sitting around waiting for it. Whereas once I get to Arizona, I know I'm there for a few days at the very minimum. So first thing I do is I walk into a shop, place an order for a few things that I know I'm going to need. When it comes in, I can get it done in my parents' driveway or something. So what that also means then is I'm stuck monitoring my oil situation and making sure that I do not do again what I did yesterday and run her without nearly enough oil for a long period of time. So that's the lesson here. Make sure you do all the maintenance that you're planning before you actually leave. Like I said, I'm hoping to hit Colorado today. I'd love to get to a campsite in Colorado. That would be my goal. But I'm really not sure what's going to happen, and it kind of depends on how the day goes, whether or not I rationalize staying at a not cheap. But anyway, so that's that.
The following series of clips highlights why we probably shouldn't judge a state by its cover. That's not quite right, but I think you get my drift. I won't sully this awesome road with my mumbling over it. Catch you guys on the other side. Today was a day full of the unexpected. Unexpected roads, since I thought I had a day of flat, straight roads ahead of me. Unexpected weather, since I thought I'd left the rain behind the day before. And as I mentioned on the road earlier, I forgot some rather crucial maintenance before I left for the trip this year, so I have that worry in my mind when suddenly the electric gremlins from the day before arise again.
So I'm not entirely sure what happened. I stopped here, changed the battery and the camera and stuff, then snapped a few photos, got back on the bike, and none of the electrics worked. Nothing worked. So I thought maybe my battery was dead, like maybe my alternator hasn't been working, and what I'd done was deplete my battery. Okay. Yeah. Checked the battery, had full voltage,
push the wire around, try it again, bike's working. It's a very, very frustrating thing to happen because you're not actually sure then what caused it and whether the issue is going to continue to happen. I do get some more jerky out of all this. I earned it. Alright.
Two additional elements will plague me on this trip, much of which isn't noticed until I get to the editing room. Those are bugs and raindrops. Over the course of this trip, I develop a good habit of wiping the screen of the camera from time to time, but today's footage has some glaring issues.
My bike's not turning on. Run it again. It's the important bit, I guess.
I also mentioned camping versus motel earlier. Allow me to clarify. In 2018, I was very ambitious. My gear includes everything from a drone for filming, which I think I managed to use once, I believe, tent, hammock, and other various camping essentials. I genuinely intended to split my time between motels and campsites, but in the end, the distances that I needed to cover in any given day made wanting to set up a camp at the end of the day a serious no. I do dream of that trip, campsite to campsite, but I've also learned that a trip like that shouldn't include 14-hour riding days, and quite possibly would be more enjoyable on a trip with at least a second biker. The ability to split the needed chores and set up to make and break camp would make it a far more enjoyable activity. At least that makes sense from me sitting in my editing chair. About midday or shortly after, I arrive at the Great Mississippi. The options for crossing the Mississippi are fewer and further between than your average river, so crossing through Fort Madison, a larger than our typical town for this trip, puts us back in gorgeous rural farmland and unexpected terrain as we break into Iowa for most of the rest of the day. There are a number of assumptions that are easy to make about states like Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska. Flat. Painfully flat. And I'm excited to tell you, it's just not the case. Granted, this trip only allowed for the slightest little bit of Kansas that we drove through, but Iowa and Nebraska are far from flat, at least off the main highways. Farms are intercut with breaks in the landscape from forests to rivers, cliffs, hills, and everything in between. I passed swamps and lowlands that reminded me of South Carolina, and forests that made me think I was driving through New England. After a quick stop to shovel food into my mouth, I'm back underway. Beauty aside, time waits for no one, and night quickly comes into view. Leaving Iowa behind and pulling into Nebraska, it's obvious that I seriously underestimated the distances I had left to get to Colorado this morning, but very happily pull into Lincoln, Nebraska for the night. Tired, sore, and forgetful, I do the basic bike maintenance Moles needs and manage to lose my only pair of sunglasses in the process. But the bed calls. I'll see you all on day 3. As always, a special thanks to all the cagers that played nicely. my buddy Cam for the support and pointers in keeping moles in running order, and of course Purple Planet for all the great music clips. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos. And as always, ride safe and ride fun.